Wow. What's up, friends? Welcome back to a new episode of How Do I Beat This? And today we got an email from Mr. Nostrus. Let me read out that email real fast. Dear Harstem, I'm a low diamond league Protoss player. I'm sending you a replay of my last game where I lost mainly due to lurkers, I think. Even though the Zerg had 1 or 2 more bases, I had as much mining as him, I think. However, I kept losing a whole bunch of my army when I fought his lurkers. I would like some advice if possible on how to manage them, especially when they have all the upgrades. I tried in this game to have lots of Archons and high Templars with Storm, but lurkers are really beefy and requires lots of Storms to destroy. Thanks in advance. Alright, Mr. Nostrus. We can fix that. I think we can. Let's head into it. As a low-level Diamond League player. Now, he thinks he lost due to lurkers. That, of course, isn't always the truth. People think they lose because of loads of reasons. Usually, there's a couple of reasons, not just one. So let's just start by going over the build order. Build order looks pretty okay. Standard 1 gate expand. He scouted his opponent, then goes back home. Something I like to do with my probes, just to keep it here, make sure that a third base will start. You see how many links get built early on, and you can kind of track where they're moving. Always useful to do in my case. I think this wall is really gonna suck. I can't imagine that a wall with this setup will end up being anything good. Guess you'll have to build a pylon here. Don't think you can fit a gate like this. So, anyway. Opens up with a Stargate. Quick tip, if you want to open Stargate, it's wise to build it further away from the scouting area of the Zerg. So you see this massive cliff is where the Overlords are going to come in from. You even see usually they just poke in and then leave because they're afraid of a Stalker. So if you have your Stargate over here, you will be able to keep it a surprise for a little bit longer. Just a quick tip. Probably isn't what lost you this game, but it could win you potentially some games where your Oracle will be able to do a lot more damage than it usually does. No, what do we chrono boost? Or never chrono boost your warp gate. That's bad. Don't chrono boost your warp gate when you're playing Stargate, please. Chrono boost either go into gateway units, into Nexi, or into Stargates. Never, ever in a million years on your warp gate. It's completely useless, unnecessary. It doesn't do anything for you. It's just bad overall, and I wish you hadn't done that. Now make sure to transfer the 2 extra workers that you have once your next is finished. There we go. Good job. Send him to your natural. First adept, what does he scout? Scouts a third base. Shades into the main base, checking for the layer timing. Or checks the drone count, making sure that it's not a link flood or some kind of weird roach all-in. Now we'll be able to scout that indeed it is not a layer. So that's a good start. Followed up by an Oracle, which is also nice. Moves back, nice in time before speed finishes. I think so far we have a good game. Okay, he's gonna wall like this. I usually wouldn't recommend walling like this, but for once... The reason I wouldn't recommend walling like this is, in case you're getting link flooded, it makes it very difficult to wall behind your initial wall, because the ramp blocks any kind of building. So, yeah, that would suck. We have Nostrus chronoing out a second Oracle, as well as 2 extra pylons. This build order is looking pretty fine, honestly, except for the supply block. This is looking pretty okay. No, there's no spores yet. Should wait for both of his Oracles, and then you slide in. Just target down drones. In this case, he actually also could target down the Queen, but yeah, targeting down the drones probably is better. I'm not quite sure why he would leave this base. This was a stupid move. I think he could have legit gotten like 9-10 workers over here. I mean, he's still gonna get 10 workers, but lose an Oracle for it. It's not really worth... I mean, it is worth it, but getting those 2 extra workers to lose your Oracle is always a bad trade. So, preferably you only kill 8 workers, keep both of your Oracles alive, rather than killing 10 workers and losing 1 Oracle. Now we see Forge and Twilight being started as well. I prefer getting a third base before you get your Forge and Twilight. You will be able to hold your third base with your Oracle and with your Immortals that you can get from the robotics facility that you get initially. The speed of your Forge and Twilight is kind of irrelevant when you're playing the way that Nostros is, because you're limited by your gate count with a push, not by the timing of your +1 and your charge. So majority of the time it's actually better to get a faster third base so you can get more money faster. It does have faster gateways, more units, then you'll have a better timing. Maybe not a sharper timing, but a better timing. Chrono boosting these two also does absolutely nothing for you at this point in the game. Unless you do a massive probe cut, and you'd have to start getting like 8 gates right now. Otherwise I don't really see the point. But I think these builds aren't that great, so let's continue. So a good early game, right? For the Protoss player. Killed 10 workers. Nexus is delayed by about half a minute, so that's worth maybe 4 or 5 workers. So he's still up 4 or 5 workers of what he should be in a usual game. Observer isn't scouting anything. You could put it over here. You could put it over here, so you can see the rallies of the natural and the main at the same time, while keeping an eye on whatever happens. You know what happens with the main structure in the main as well. Not a massive fan of this position. You don't want to move it too much either, because it becomes easier to spot when it's moving for the Zerg. So ideally just kind of leave it in one location that is semi-hidden. Now, our opponent Roking is getting an Infestation Pit, Hydra Den, double Evo, very old build order. Started with a Roach Warren as well, and straight into 8 gas, which is just not very good, honestly. We see a bunch of batteries. Straight Storm. Now, I usually don't suggest people to go straight Storm, because the moment you get Storm immediately, you lose a lot of your map control. You can't really push on the map easily with 4 Templar like you can with 2 Archons. Getting surrounded by Lynx or getting attacked by Roaches is a lot scarier if you don't have Archons. Storm doesn't quite give you the same safety. Makes it easier for your opponent to drone up. We also do not see a Prism on the map yet. Prisms are always necessary. I always recommend after 2 Immortals to get a Prism. Even if you just put it over here in the dead space and only move it in the moment you see your opponent moves out, that's usually good enough, and the Prism will be worth it. Don't forget the Prism is a 250 mineral unit. That's worth 2 supply. So if you kill 3 drones or 2 drones with it, and you force 5 or 6 roaches to stay at home, that's completely fine. You know, you can put 1 zealot or 2 zealots in it. You don't need to do the massive warp ins. Just be annoying with it whenever your opponent moves out. Now, what else do we have? We don't have continual robo use, which is a mistake. Ideally, this robotics facility always wants to be producing something, whether that's a Prism, an Observer, or Immortals. You always want to be producing stuff, and we don't see that. We also see Nostros is not actually saturating his gases very well. Then, I know I say this every single episode, but look at the vision that Nostros has right now. So he has vision over this spot where rocks used to be. He has vision of this dead space. He has no vision whatsoever on the map. He doesn't know where the army is. He doesn't know what the army consists of. He doesn't know if there's a hive on the way, which, by the way, there isn't. So he doesn't know army composition. He doesn't know army position. And he isn't aware of any potential run-bys. Now, a quick fix for this would be, look how many zealots he has in his army. Send 1 zealot here. 1 zealot here. 1 zealot here. And 1 zealot here. 4 zealots. Takes about 4 seconds to do on the minimap. Not even. 2 seconds if you're quick. Like pop, 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 pop. And just like that. You have vision on the map. You give yourself warnings whenever you get attacked. It's easier to get into position like that. Makes it a lot easier. Now, once again, of course, these gases should have been saturated a long time ago. Also, one more time, if you do have that vision and you have the Prism here, whenever you see someone get in vision, you can be like, hey, if his army is over here, the Prism in his main base should be able to do some damage, maybe, you know? These are things to keep in mind. That's why map vision is so important. That's why I mention it 17 times per episode. And that's why it makes me so upset that every single week I see people not having any map vision whatsoever. Now, here we see a mass Roach army and a couple of Hydras. Now, what is the counter to Roach? That's the Immortal. So, yeah, perfect. We see another Immortal being produced. I think there already could have been a couple of extra Immortals as well. Sadly, we don't see that. Now, another thing you can do as Protoss is to send 4 Zealots over here. If you don't have time to build a Prism because you need to be building Immortals all the time, send 4 Zealots here. Whenever you see your opponent move in, send the Zealots into the third base. Just like that, you set up a counter attack. But once again, doing all these things is impossible if you don't have map vision. How can you react to anything if you're blind? Well, you can do it with your other senses, but that's only in real life. Doesn't quite work in StarCraft 2 majority of the time. And just like that, as I was saying, oh, no vision whatsoever, army is out of position. He managed to walk through a choke. And just like that, an engagement that could have potentially been absolutely game-winning still turns into a pretty okay engagement, but only because the Zerg completely mismicroed this. I mean, the Protoss did manage to win this engagement, but that's more due to the lack of Zerg micro than due to anything that Nostrus did correctly here. Now, a very common mistake that I see everyone make is that whenever they win a fight, they immediately run across the map to try and do counter damage. A lot of the time against Zerg, this doesn't actually work because they usually have a lot of larva, a lot of money. If you don't have a prism and you don't have a lot of storms or you don't have a big army, most of the time you're just going to lose all of your expensive units, your Archons, your Immortals. Just like this actually. This is very common. And the lead that Nostrus had about 10 seconds ago has disappeared again already. Something you can do, for example, is decide to clear 1 or 2 creep tumors while sending a 3 zealot run by into this base or 3 zealots towards this base. Setting up the gases here, you know, just making sure you're still in a good position a minute from now rather than throwing away your lead immediately. Usually a good rule is, hey, if I'm less than 150 supply after we had a big fight, I probably should wait a little bit until I at least get 150, 160 supply before I move on the map, because armies that belong to Protoss, less than 160 supply in Protoss versus Zerg, are usually not very powerful at all. I like that he rebuilt some Templar though. Once again, I would love to see this Prism on the map. I would love to see some run-bys being set up. Here, maybe 4 Zealots waiting over here. Don't forget, something you can also do is just send 3 Zealots in immediately. And as you notice that your opponent is dealing with it, try to take out some creep. Because don't forget, creep functions as vision. Look at the vision of the Zerg here. Zerg almost has the entire map under its vision, which is beautiful, of course. Then we look at the Protoss. Protoss still completely blind. So what do we want to do? We can set up a run-by like this. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And as we do that, we spread out our vision. So a Zealot here, a Zealot here, a Zealot here, a Zealot here. And we move with our main army very conservatively. Just kill some active creep tumors. You know, deny that creep spread by your opponent. Limit their vision, so in the future your army will be able to do more damage if you attack them by surprise. Now, something to keep in mind if you're Protoss is to make sure that you know when the hive finishes, because the hive is an important structure for Zerg, of course. It gives them, it makes Broodlords available. It makes long-range lurkers available. All of these things are very important for Zerg in a late-game scenario. And you want to get an army composition that will be able to battle what your opponent has. Now, 30 Zealots are very nice, but majority of the time you'll notice that the difference between 20 and 30 Zealots is almost nothing. Even the difference between 15 and 20 Zealots is almost nothing. And that's why if you have this many Zealots, it's better, especially if you're planning to attack, is to send 5 in a run-by here, 5 in a run-by here, and this can all be shift-clicked. Just shift-click it up, and then go on the map. That way, if you think you can't win the fight, you can just retreat and go back, while your shift-clicked Zealots will be able to do some damage. Now, this fight, you never really want to engage down a ramp into lurkers like this. Even though this fight looks to be going okay, the moment your backbone gets taken down against lurker, it's almost impossible for Protoss to really rebuild this, because Zerg can rebuild 20 Hydras and then morph them straight into lurkers, but Protoss needs to wait for every single Immortal to be built again and again and again. So it's slightly different there. So even if you think, hey, this was a pretty okay fight, like, we need so much time as Protoss players to rebuild that army that it's almost impossible to stay alive in the game until you have that army that you need once again. Now, a good way to win time, once again, would be to send out run-bys, or would be to send out a prism. maybe get a second robotics facility or a third robotics facility even, so you can pump out these immortals faster. Your opponent has an army that consists of roaches and lurkers. Both of these units extremely weak against immortals. You want an immortal count of 6 or 7, not an immortal count of 1 or 2. Like even in last fight there was only 2 immortals. Like that makes fights a lot more difficult than they should be. Even though Prolos is trading pretty okay with just pure Zealot Archon, because his upgrades are nice and this Zerg is not really microing too well, this would be going so much better if this army had 4 or 5 immortals. Always think of army compositions like, hey, what does my opponent have? What are the natural counters towards it? And majority of the time you can kind of split that into 2 parts. So on the one hand you had the Baneling focused, the Baneling centric composition. You got your Hydra Bane, your Ravagerling Bane, your Ling Bane sometimes even. In that case, Mutalisks and Archons are really the answer to those compositions. And then you have the Roach Hydra, the Roach Hydra Lurker, Roach Hydra Viper, that kind of stuff. Maybe Roach Hydra Infestors. Against those compositions, Immortal Storm is more what you want. So against the Bane compositions, you want to focus more on getting Archons. And against these Roach Hydra, Lurker compositions, you want to focus more on getting a higher Immortal count and perhaps less Archons. Now the one thing that you want to do against both is that you want to be doing run-bys. Run-bys with Zealots, like I said. 30 Zealots don't fight too great by themselves. On most maps, none of them will be able to fight. Like if you fight in a choke, there will always be some guys walking behind. So send those guys around to kill outside bases. Try to do some harassment. You always have way more minerals as Gas as a Protoss player, so try to use that. Once again, he wins a fight, sends all of his units that he had left over from the fight straight into their death. This is a very common theme I see with lower level Protosses. They're like, oh, I won a fight, I should be able to do some damage now. Throw away all their Zealots or all their Immortals and Archons away in one place, and just like that, boop, advantage is gone again and you're down 80 supply for no reason. Now, once again we see an army composition that's largely incorrect. Just pure Zealot, Archon, Immortal. No harassment whatsoever from the Protoss player. Still complete lack of vision on the map as well, which is painful. And also never really having an idea what his opponent's army consists of. You know, is this 7 Lurkers? Is this 2 Lurkers? Is this Roach Hydra? Is this Mass Roach? You know, what is my opponent remaxing on? You want to find these things out. An Oracle can be very helpful in that. Tagging your opponent's army from a distance. Seeing how he moves, where he is. Sadly, it's not the case here. And now this fight would have been really, really sick. Actually, this fight's still gonna be pretty sick. If there was like 4 or 5 Immortals here. But if there's no Immortals, you can't really engage ever into this army. You can only engage into it if Lurkers are not burrowed. Or if you have the sickest like surround coming from 2 sides. Don't forget, treat Lurkers a bit like you would treat tanks. Alright? Treat it a bit how you would treat mech in a way, where you always want to come from 2 sides. You want to get your Charged Archon Immortal composition, and you want to, you know, of course you want to harass. You want to do that against mech as well, but really pay attention to how you set up your engagement and think like, hey, would it be smart maybe if I send 10 Zealots up here and then come from here, or should I just move everything to this choke? Well, the answer to that is most of the time no. Should I get some extra Immortals to deal better with Lurkers or tanks? The answer to that is most of the time yes. Now, I don't even mind the air transition, but I would have loved this air transition if it was on the back of a stable backbone with 6-7 Immortals in this army. That way you're way more solid. You have way more solid ground to make a transition on. Now we see the creep is absolutely getting out of control as well, which makes it harder to do any kind of counter attack as well, or basically to defend this 5th base. Once again, we see Nostrus being completely blind for everything. Hey, this path has been safe all the time for Zealot run-bys, and he hasn't used it once. Now, this fight, this engagement, was actually a really, really good engagement. I'll just watch it one more time. Like, he completely surrounded him, basically. But here you see what happens if you just have a crap army, basically. Like, his army is not good. Archons are bugging behind. Storms don't really do a lot of damage to this. and it still was kind of, you know, one-dimensional, still came from one angle only. So if you really need immortals in an army like this, so I got 11 Vipers. This guy's also a bit woo-woo. A bit out of it mentally. So if we check unit lost, we see the unit lost is only slightly in favor of Zerg. Like it's about 3k. So Zerg actually also mined a lot more. Protoss does have 96 workers, but I mean this kind of fight, you could have twice the income and you'd probably still be having a losing battle here. I think at this point the game is pretty much over. So really the things you want to be paying attention to against Lurkers is, first of all, is there abilities to counterattack? Second of all, do I know where he's coming from? Just like against mech, it's important to know where his army will be so you can set up an engagement that you want. Third of all, army composition. Get your immortals going. Try to get an oracle in your army so you know where these lurkers are located. Also helps just with overall knowing where their army is moving. Revelation is such a powerful spell and I barely see it used. And especially at lower levels. People say, well, at higher levels it's like map hack. Well, lower levels is exactly the same thing. And because at lower levels it's so much rarer to see people actually have vision. Having an oracle is such a big tool. You can most of the time keep them alive from the early game, but if you can't, keep them from later, you know, just rebuild one or two. It's completely fine. Build a stasis here and there. Use them to revelate your opponent's army for full vision. It helps a lot. Trust me on that. And then do the carrier switch or your Tempest switch or whatever you want to do after you get immortals. But really try to get more map vision. Try to start attack. Look, no spines, nothing here. No spines, nothing here. Not a lot of vision around this base. So many opportunities to do damage. And it's really easy to do as well. So, yikes. It's the way of the world, boys. Alright everyone, that was it for today's How Do I Beat It. I hope you did enjoy this episode. We only did one game, but we did it really in depth. I hope this was useful. If it was, please like my video, as it helps me so much. Subscribe to my channel and leave a comment down below. In the responses, I read all my comments, I just never respond. Alright. Love you all very much. Bye bye.